So let's look at money and cultures in general. On the practice of handling money, fundraising, and accounting among organizations, there are so many cultural issues. And here are just a few to keep in mind. First of all, there's the issue of dependence or independence. Now, this discussion and debate about dependency and funds is ongoing. There are so many different views on this. One perspective, they will argue for healthy partnerships where the wealthy West work together with those with less resources for better outcomes in God's kingdom work. Both groups contribute to the projects and the ministries with the resources that they have. Now, another view is that dependence on Western funds can cause harm. They would say that donations lead to dependency. Much has been written on this. See, for example, these books, To Give or Not to Give, Rethinking Dependency, Restoring Generosity, and Redefining Sustainability. Now that's a mouthful. And then there is Dead Aid, Why Aid is Not Working, and How There's a Better Way for Africa. And then When Helping Hurts, How to Alleviate Poverty Without Hurting the Poor and Yourself. And then another book, When Charity Destroys Dignity, Overcoming Unhealthy Dependency in the Christian Movement. Now, this discussion is multifaceted and, of course, very necessary, but somewhat outside the scope of our module. But briefly, those who say that donations create dependency, they will argue that the national body, for example, the local church or a charity, any institution, will have less incentive to get involved financially if outside help is readily available. If the recipients see themselves as needy and helpless, they begin to believe that they are victims. And then the Westerners think that they can solve the problems with more funds. And furthermore, funds can create divisions and jealousies. Oh, where did that ministry get their money from? And how come they're so well off? But such arguments can be used as excuses not to be generous. We don't want them to depend on us, so we don't give at all. This treats the indigenous partner as immature children. Generally, Westerners believe in independence and freedom with things financial. And so because of past failures and seeing societies with the dependency syndrome, they stress the principle of sustainability. So many donors have become cautious about funding projects that do not have a clear sustainability plan. This includes the assurance that the project is owned by the receiving field so that they themselves will carry the project forward. Many non-Western cultures appreciate interdependence and sharing, especially caring for those in need. And where there is clear economic disparity between the haves and have-nots, those with financial resources and those with less resources, it is simply expected that those with resources will share with those who do not have resources, the grant-aided people. We call this the system of patronage, which includes financial support, but which is much broader than simply money. But without this, most traditional societies could not survive. The well-to-do patrons support the needy clients. And this generosity is seen as a fundamental virtue of the righteous rich. Now, I plan to do a full lesson on patronage, patron-client relationships, and what Del Chinchin has called redeemed patronage for another module. What about rules and relationships? In the global South, relationships usually define the rules. In other words, the type of relationships determines how one relates to the person. And so if it's a relationship of friendship, this definitely includes financial matters. And as one builds relationships and commitments to one another, trust develops. And as a friend will say, we have one pocket. Now, this can be a tremendous bond that will help a person in difficult times, but it can also be highly misused and abused. On the other hand, it sometimes seems that in the West, policies and rules and contracts form the basis for relationships. We would say that people can build and maintain trust by following proper policies and procedures. And this is especially true in money transactions and loans, as Western cultures emphasize fairness and accurate accounts. Needless to say, fairness and handling loans are interpreted very differently in cultures around the world. And then there is transparency and how it is understood in different cultures. My colleague John served as an advisor for an exciting ministry from a communal culture. Now, this ministry received funds from a church in the West for a building project. The grant was given through a large organization that John was connected with. The church asked the ministry to verify that the funds be kept for this specific building project. And John confirmed that it would be. But then he found out that the funds had been spent for another purpose, probably for some emergency. Now, John wanted to be transparent and upfront, so he communicated this to the church. When his ministry colleagues found out that John had done this, they were offended. Why had John released this information? It was shameful for them. They had clear intentions to make up for it down the road. Now, John wanted to be transparent and thereby build more trust, but the ministry colleagues felt that through such transparency, they were being shamed and that the relationship would be undermined. Now, in Western cultures, transparency usually is connected with integrity, while in many communal cultures, people feel that the demand for transparency means that they're forced to expose themselves unnecessarily and give opportunity for others to control them. Some cultures value self-disclosure, whereas others are slower to divulge personal or sensitive information or mistakes they may have made. Now I wonder, can we somehow find a middle ground here? We're now going to take a moment to do this activity before we go on with another clip.